I'm going to demonstrate how to cut a spline miter joint using the jig that we made in part 1. Let's get started. As you can see, I already have my box prepared. I've planed my boards to their thickness and cut the miters on the ends of the boards where two boards meet, forming a 90-degree angle. Now what I need to do is apply glue to the miter joint and then using these band clamps, clamp the whole piece together and then allow enough time to dry. Once your glue is dry, carefully unclamp your box. Once your piece is unclamped, it's now time to put layout marks where your splines will be located. When figuring out the spacing for your splines, it's a good idea to apply a piece of masking tape to the edge of your board so that your pencil marks are easily seen. My spacing is 2 on the outside and 3 in the middle. I normally set the depth of my table saw blade to 3/4 the distance from the outside to the inside of the miter. In this case, I'll have to be extra careful not to cut into the dados located on the inside of my box. Let's go to the table saw and get our jig set up. When cutting your splines, you need to be using a table saw blade that has flat ground teeth. This makes sure that the groove that your splines will be inserted into will have a nice flush flat bottom. The distance that your splines are cut from the edge of the board in towards the middle is determined by the placement of your fence. Your jig has a guide that slides over the fence and it has a vertical wall that is 3/4 of an inch thick. So what you need to do is decide how far in from the edge of your board your spline will be cut and add 3/4 of an inch. This dimension is how far you want the edge of your fence to be from the blade. Once your fence is set, take a board, place it into your jig and make a test cut. This will make sure that your fence is in the proper place. If the location of the groove in your test board is correct, it's now time to cut the grooves in your piece. Locate it into the jig. Make sure that it's seated flushly in the bottom and up against the vertical part of the jig. Once you've made your first cut, reposition the piece in the jig to cut all corners. To cut the opposite side, rotate it around and repeat this step. Then, reposition the fence each time you need to move further into the board. Once you repeated those steps enough time to cut all the grooves, it's now time to cut the spline that will be inserted into the groove. To make the splines, you need to rip a strip of wood that's the same width as the blade that you use to cut the grooves. This normally takes several attempts to get a proper fit. It ended up taking me 3 attempts to get the proper thickness to fit into my grooves. If you cut it too thin, it'll be too loose in the groove. If you cut it too thick, it either won't fit or it'll be in there too tight and squeeze out most of your glue. Now you need to cut short sections that will fit into your grooves. Use a ruler and measure the bottoms of your grooves to make sure that you don't cut your pieces that will turn into your splines any longer than you need to. Once you've cut enough splines, apply glue to the splines and into the grooves. Make sure that you press them all the way down into the groove to where they're seated flushly on the bottom. Once you've sanded your splines flush, continue sanding them to the desired smoothness, then apply your favorite finish. The end result will be a strong, stylish joint that, if cared for properly, should last lifetimes. Make sure to post a comment letting me know what kind of techniques you'd like to see in future videos. Thanks for watching.